Jacob was a poor farmer who lived on the edge of a small village. His house was little more than a wooden cabin with a thatched roof, surrounded by a few acres of land where he grew corn, beans, and a few vegetables. Every day, from the first light of dawn until the sun began to set, Jacob worked tirelessly. His hands were calloused and rough from years of digging, planting, and harvesting. Yet he never complained. Though his life was simple, Jacob had a kind heart, and everyone in the village respected him for his honesty and hard work. One warm spring morning, as Jacob walked along the narrow dirt path that led through his fields, he noticed something unusual. A small figure was stumbling along the path, barely able to stand. At first, Jacob thought it might be a lost child from the village. But as he got closer, he realized it was not a child he had seen before. The boy was wearing clothes, unlike anyone in the village wore. His hair was dark and braided, and he had colorful patterns painted on his face. Jacob could see that the boy was weak and bleeding from a deep scratch on his arm. Jacob's first thought was to help him. The boy looked terrified and in pain. Jacob gently guided the boy into his cabin, where he laid him on a small bed covered with a clean cloth. "Don't worry, boy," Jacob said softly. "You're safe here." The boy did not speak. He only looked at Jacob with wide, frightened eyes. Jacob could tell that he was from the Apache tribe, a group that lived in the nearby hills and forests. Many villagers were afraid of the Apache, believing them to be fierce and unpredictable. Jacob, however, only saw a boy in need. He cleaned the wound carefully, using water from the well and a clean cloth. He made a small poultice from herbs he had grown and applied it gently to the cut. Then, he wrapped the boy's arm to keep it from bleeding. That evening, Jacob prepared a small meal. He offered the boy some corn mush and boiled beans, but the boy only shook his head. Jacob did not press him. Instead, he sat quietly by the fire, keeping the boy company. He knew the boy must have been frightened, far from his family and home. Jacob thought about what it must have been like to be alone in a strange place, injured and scared. He understood that kindness sometimes mattered more than anything else. Night came, and the wind rustled through the trees outside. Jacob placed a blanket over the boy and whispered, "You'll be safe here. No one will hurt you." Slowly, the boy's eyes closed, and he drifted into sleep. Jacob sat by the fire for a long time, thinking about how the boy might be feeling and wondering if the Apache tribe would come looking for him. He knew he had taken a risk. If the Apache thought he had harmed the boy, they might come seeking revenge. But Jacob also knew that he had done the right thing. A person in need deserved help, no matter who they were. The next morning, the boy woke up, looking a little stronger but still wary. Jacob offered him breakfast again. This time, the boy ate slowly, as if testing whether Jacob's kindness was real. Jacob smiled and spoke gently, telling the boy about the village and the farm. He tried to make the boy feel safe. Over time, the boy began to trust Jacob, speaking a few words in his language and pointing to the wound on his arm to show it was feeling better. Jacob nodded and encouraged him, happy to see that the boy's strength was returning. As the day went on, Jacob could not help but notice that the boy's eyes held a quiet intelligence. He watched everything carefully, noticing how Jacob worked in the fields and how he cared for the animals. There was a seriousness in the boy that made Jacob think he was not just an ordinary child. Later, when Jacob asked him name, the boy pointed to himself and said a name that Jacob did not understand fully, but he knew it was important. Word of the boy's arrival soon spread through the village. Some villagers whispered that Jacob had brought trouble by helping a child from the Apache tribe. Others, however, admired his courage. "You are brave, Jacob," an older neighbor said. "Many would have left him to die, but you helped. That is a rare gift." Jacob nodded, knowing that the risk he had taken was necessary. He could not ignore a boy in need, even if it meant facing danger later. As night approached again, Jacob sat outside, keeping watch over the boy. The stars twinkled in the sky, and the air was filled with the soft sounds of the night. Jacob thought about the boy's family. He imagined how worried they must be, how desperate they might feel looking for him. Jacob hoped that one day they would come and thank him for saving their child. He did not know if it would happen, but he hoped. By the next morning, the boy was able to stand and walk slowly, leaning on Jacob for support. They moved together to the field, where Jacob showed the boy how to carry water and tend to the crops. The boy began to smile, a shy but genuine smile that made Jacob feel proud. He realized that the boy's bravery matched his own in a way. To survive, alone and injured, required courage beyond what most adults could manage. As Jacob worked, he could hear the sounds of movement in the hills. The wind carried faint voices, and he sensed that something was coming. He did not know if it was friends of the boy or enemies, but he prepared himself for the possibility. Jacob's heart pounded, yet he stayed calm. He had done what he believed was right, and he would not let fear control him. Suddenly, a rider appeared at the edge of the field. Jacob squinted in the sunlight and saw a figure on a horse, wearing traditional Apache clothing. Behind the rider, others followed, their horses kicking up dust as they approached. Jacob realized, with a mixture of fear and relief, that it must be the boy's family. He stepped forward, ready to explain, ready to show that he had done nothing but help. The rider stopped near the boy, and Jacob noticed the young faces of others who had come with him. The boy turned toward them, recognition lighting his face. Jacob watched as the group approached, and he felt a sense of awe. The people were strong and proud, and their leader, Jacob realized, must be the father of the boy. Jacob's heart raced. He did not know what to expect. Would the chief be angry? Would he punish Jacob for interfering? Jacob stepped forward, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "I only wanted to help your son," he said in a steady voice. "He was hurt. I could not leave him alone." The Apache chief looked at Jacob for a long moment. His face was serious, unreadable. Then he spoke in a firm voice, which Jacob could understand through the boy's translation. "You saved my son's life," the chief said. "You showed courage and kindness, even when it could have been dangerous for you." Jacob felt a mixture of surprise and relief. He had feared punishment, but instead, the chief recognized his bravery. The boy ran to his father, safe and smiling for the first time in days. The chief turned to Jacob and nodded. "Your heart is good. Your actions are honorable. Tomorrow, I will come to show my gratitude properly." With that, the group slowly rode back toward their land, leaving Jacob standing in the field, exhausted but proud. Jacob returned to his cabin, still thinking about the events of the day. He had never imagined that helping a child could lead to such an extraordinary encounter. He did not know what the chief's gratitude would look like, but he knew that he had done the right thing. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel that maybe, just maybe, his simple life could hold something remarkable. That night, Jacob lay in bed, listening to the wind and the soft sounds of the forest. He thought about the boy, about the chief, and about what tomorrow might bring. Sleep came slowly, filled with dreams of courage, honor, and unexpected rewards. For Jacob, the first part of this story was over. But he could not yet imagine the incredible events that the next day would bring, events that would change his life forever. The next morning, Jacob woke before the sun had fully risen. He felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The events of the previous day still lingered in his mind. The boy he had rescued, the pain he had seen, and the gratitude in the chief's eyes. Now, he wondered what the chief's promise of gratitude might mean. He stepped outside his cabin and looked toward the distant hills. The morning air was fresh, and the smell of dew-covered grass filled his lungs. As he worked in his small field, tending to the corn and beans, he heard a faint rumble in the distance. At first, he thought it was the wind, or the sound of a herd of animals. But soon, the sound grew louder, rhythmic, and deliberate. Jacob's heart began to race. He squinted toward the horizon and saw a sight he could hardly believe. Horses, many horses, were moving toward his village in perfect formation. Leading them was a tall figure, wearing the traditional clothing of the Apache tribe, adorned with bright feathers and colorful patterns. Jacob stopped what he was doing and watched as the group came closer. Behind the chief, he could see 20 young women riding gracefully on horseback. Each wore intricate clothing, decorated with beads and patterns that shone in the sunlight. The sight was breathtaking. Jacob felt a mixture of awe and confusion. He had never imagined anything like this. What could the chief want from him? What did it mean that 20 women were following him? When they reached the edge of his field, the chief dismounted and approached Jacob. His face was serious, but there was a warm light in his eyes. Jacob felt a little nervous, but he stood tall, ready to face whatever the chief wanted to say. The young boy ran ahead to his father, hugging him tightly. Jacob could see the love and relief in the chief's expression. The boy had returned safely, and Jacob had made it possible. The chief turned to Jacob, speaking through the boy's translation. "Jacob, your actions yesterday saved my son's life. You showed courage, kindness, and respect. These qualities are rare and precious. I have come to show my gratitude properly." Jacob nodded, unsure of what to say. Words felt small, compared to the moment he was witnessing. Then, to Jacob's astonishment, the chief gestured toward the 20 young women. "These are my daughters and my nieces," the chief said. "Each one is strong, wise, and skilled. Today, I offer you a choice. You may choose one, and she will become your wife." Jacob could hardly believe his ears. He had been a poor farmer all his life, struggling to grow enough food to feed his family. And yet here he was, being offered a choice of 20 remarkable women. His mind raced. He felt honored, but also overwhelmed. Could such generosity be real? Could it be true that his simple act of kindness would lead to this? The young women smiled at him, each showing respect and curiosity. Some were shy, some were confident, and each seemed to hold a story of her own. Jacob could see that they were all strong and intelligent, capable of leading, working, and creating a life of their own. The chief waited patiently, allowing Jacob the time to consider his choice. Jacob took a deep breath. He thought about the values he had learned all his life: honesty, courage, and kindness. He realized that the woman he chose should not be selected for beauty alone, but for character, for a spirit that would complement his own. He walked slowly among the young women, observing them, speaking gently, and asking questions through the boy who translated for him. One young woman caught his attention. Her name was Ayala, and she had a calm presence that made Jacob feel at ease. She spoke little at first, but listened carefully, and her eyes held warmth and intelligence. Jacob felt a connection, a sense of respect and understanding that went beyond words. He realized that this woman, above all, shared the qualities he valued: strength, compassion, and wisdom. After a long moment of thought, Jacob turned to the chief. "I choose Ayala," he said softly, but with certainty. The chief smiled, a deep, proud smile that reached his eyes. "You have chosen well," he said. "Ayala will be your wife, and together, you will honor the bonds between our people and yours." Ayala stepped forward and took Jacob's hand. She smiled warmly, and Jacob felt a wave of happiness wash over him. This was a moment he would never forget, the moment when his simple act of kindness had led to an extraordinary gift. The chief nodded to the group of women, and the young women bowed respectfully. Some whispered congratulations. Others offered smiles of encouragement. Jacob felt a sense of belonging he had never known before. He realized that bravery and kindness could lead to connections that went far beyond what anyone could imagine. The chief then spoke to Jacob privately. "Your courage has earned the respect of my people. Remember, a true bond is built on trust, respect, and understanding. Care for Ayala as you would your own family, and your life together will be strong and full of happiness." Jacob nodded solemnly, feeling the weight and the honor of the words. He knew he would do everything in his power to honor this gift. Over the next few days, the village and the Apache tribe worked together to prepare a celebration. Jacob's cabin was cleaned and repaired, and his small farm was decorated with flowers and handmade decorations. The villagers, who had watched the events unfold with amazement, joined in to celebrate the union. Music filled the air, drums and flutes echoing across the fields as laughter and joy spread among everyone present. On the day of the celebration, Jacob and Ayala stood together, holding hands and looking around at the gathered people. The chief spoke, offering blessings and words of encouragement. Jacob could see the joy in Ayala's eyes, and he felt a sense of hope and pride he had never experienced. He realized that this was more than a reward. It was a bond of friendship, respect, and family between different cultures. As the sun set, casting golden light across the fields, Jacob reflected on the incredible journey that had brought him here. Just a day ago, he was a simple farmer, tending to his crops and living a modest life. Now, he had saved a boy, earned the respect of a powerful chief, and found a companion in Ayala who shared his values and dreams. Life had changed in ways he could never have imagined. In the days that followed, Jacob and Ayala worked together on the farm, learning from each other and sharing their skills. Jacob taught Ayala about farming, planting, and caring for the animals, while Ayala shared her knowledge of the forest, herbs, and the wisdom of her people. Together, they created a life that was rich not in wealth, but in love, respect, and partnership. The villagers watched as the bond between Jacob and Ayala grew stronger each day. They marveled at how a single act of courage and kindness could create such extraordinary outcomes. Jacob became an example to all who knew him, a man who lived by his heart, who helped a child in need, and who was rewarded not with gold or silver, but with friendship, love, and honor. And so, life continued on the small farm, with the boy often visiting, laughing, and playing under the watchful eyes of Jacob and Ayala. The chief sometimes came to see his son, bringing gifts and sharing stories of his people. Jacob realized that the greatest treasures in life were not the rewards one could hold, but the relationships, trust, and respect built through simple, courageous acts. Jacob and Ayala's story became a legend in the village, told again and again as a tale of bravery, kindness, and unexpected blessings. It reminded everyone that helping others, even in small ways, could lead to extraordinary rewards. And for Jacob, it was a life-changing lesson that courage and compassion, when guided by a good heart, could open doors to wonders beyond imagination.